humans can speak in languages animals cannot, and language is afforded to us as an inherent biological resource, a universal grammar that other animals do not, right? Like it's sort of this very solid wall between humans and the rest of the animal species.
Okay, the wall seems solid, but one of the reasons it seems solid is because when people talk about language, they don't recognize that they're really talking about two or three different phenomena. For one thing, they don't distinguish between words and grammar. So let's start with animals.
Right.
Humans, like animals, communicate. Almost all species communicate. Language is a special case of communication. And language has always been a puzzle for evolutionary theory because it's the one phenomenon that evolution can't explain. The question is, how do you get from animal communication, which consists of emotional signals, which are unidirectional, they're not conversational. The reason an animal communicates is to manipulate another organism's behavior. It wants to mate, it wants to attack, it wants to defend, it wants to exclaim that it found food. Those are the contents of animal communication. Words, on the other hand, are arbitrary. We have thousands of different languages. I can say eat, I can say manger, and so on for all the other languages. And words are learned. Animal communication is not learned, it's hardwired. You can't teach an animal a new way to communicate.
Right.
So we're talking about vast differences, and the critical question in evolutionary theory is how was that jump from animal communication to language, and in this case words, how was that accomplished?
Right. And I mean, so just to be clear on the animal front of communication, it seems like animals have only one directional communication. Only I can say something to you, there is no conversation.
That's right. That is unidirectional.
Unidirectional. There is only a limited set of expressions that animals can use, which are purely emotionally driven. Eat, mate, right? Stuff like that. And for humans, the jump that sort of, I remember Wallace pointing out that the best of animals is so far behind the worst of humans in some sense, in terms of the evolutionary schema, that the worst of humans, quote unquote, can do so much more with words and grammar that animals just cannot.
Okay, well, before we get to grammar, let's notice that words are arbitrary and have to be learned. The number of words you can learn is essentially infinite. We can keep adding more and more words to our vocabulary.
Right.
But a critical feature of words is that they're conversational. You and I assume the role of listener and speaker. I'm the speaker, you're the listener. Then we take turns. You're the speaker, I'm the listener. Right. That never happens with animals.
Right.
So even before we get to grammar, we have conversation and we have arbitrary symbols for words.
Right. Right. And I guess the book that you recently wrote has two stories embedded in them. The first story is the evolution of language. The second story is the history of the speculation on why humans evolved language.
Okay.
Right?
Before we get to that story,
right,
I have to make clear that, like everybody else, when I started my research with chimpanzees, I had a very naive view of language. I did not differentiate between words and grammar. I was motivated by Chomsky's claim that only humans have language. I was also motivated by Skinner's claim that language is simply a collection of conditioned responses. And I followed some other psychologists in trying to show Skinner was right by trying to train a chimpanzee
Right.
use language, not spoken language, because they don't have the articulatory apparatus to speak.
Right.
But sign language, and we know that they can use gestures, and there were projects that had already attempted to use sign language. So that was my aim. The aim was actually to get a chimpanzee to produce sentences in sign language.
Right.
This was a very naive view of language at the